You are not a cat.
We're just seeing.
Recording is on.
Welcome to DXdao's weekly call. We've been alternating on this call between recapping recent events and doing some resource coordination. This week's a resource coordination meeting. Not a very strict agenda here, so we can kind of open up to topics that people want to talk about. But I wanted to start by kind of going through the open positions, discussing that a bit, and seeing if we are kind of on the same page there. Since you want to share it, I can share my screen too, either way.
I got it here. Just to provide some background, so I feel like we've started the last month or two. There's been a lot of good work in forming into more specific product teams. As we were 2 weeks ago doing the squads, it was Omen, Mesa, and Swapper have kind of formulated their own teams, and we got to see how we kind of and then we kind of look into elsewhere in DXdao and where we need help, where we need things, and so this is just kind of based on some conversations that we've had. People say things were missing, so I also was thinking of terminology too. I think is somewhat important for this, so definitely eager for feedback there. So HR or people mover. I think HR is not the best brand or meme, but what it does from a service, from a day-to-day ease is really important. So I think we want to kind of find someone there. Marketing narrative builder. I think we need to find someone who's constantly thinking about the overarching narrative that DXdao and the products are trying to convey, and then be able to tie in content execution to those. And then treasury manager, accounting, really just someone who can keep track of all of the different transactions and really investments that we're putting in across the products, especially as today we just put some the XDAI authorization proposal went through, and that is 158,000 DAI that is now in XDAI base, which is good for which is obviously going to be good for worker payments, but that kind of leads a whole other thing in terms of accounting. And then as Sky did a good job preparing some of the treasury diversification moves yesterday, we just need to do a little bit better job of tracking that. And so looking for someone there. And then senior Web3 front end, maybe just a generic term for always interested in great devs that can contribute. I think we always want to be open to that. And the QA engineer, again, I think we started to work on this a little bit. I know Vinky is providing support there. Biz dev whiz. As the products start to roll out V2s or come to full launch, we'll be doing, I think, a lot more on the biz dev front, and so probably have someone that's more focused on owning relationships and keeping track of those. And then I have Asia focused marketing guru, just someone I think needs to be focused on that market eventually. And then product support. This is something I think Martin had mentioned in the last one there about, again, as our products start hitting the market, we're going to need someone that's just almost full-time helping users on that. So you're going to have looked at the document. I did try to provide some descriptions on what the role what would be. So there's typically here a brief description of what we're looking for, and then these two different bullet point lists, what they will do, and then what we're looking for. And I've only done the HR people mover, marketing narrative builder, treasury manager accounting, and then I have not done these yet. But this is just kind of the areas I feel like we're looking for help over the next 3 to 4 months that maybe we can try to fill. So I don't know if anyone had places additional to look for or comments on this.
Yeah, I have two different ones. I would say for the front end bit, I think it's hard for some developers to know exactly what me as a product designer wants. So I would say, maybe, I don't know if we should split and make another one that's called designer and the front end developer. So that person is actually a more designer, but doing the code part of it, more than just knowing how to do front end, right? So that's one thing I'm thinking about. And another one is after Entrecasa is done with their job of branding and marketing content and website, I think we need obviously the marketing person, but we need also someone continuing creating like design stuff and infographics and marketing content and stuff like that. So I would say a designer also, not the product designer, just like a designer.
Right. Maybe that could be something that this person hires.
Yeah,
too.
for sure.
But like,
I mean, we need someone that's owning marketing and leading that team.
Right.
That designer needs tasks to do.
Yeah, I also agree with kind of keeping a senior Web3 engineer role and probably maybe add to that like a senior smart contract developer role. I actually think we've made some really good progress in the last couple, like really the last month, even things have kind of come together, I think, nicely, bringing on a couple people to Mesa and a few people on Swapper who have experience. So I think at the moment we're in a decent spot, but as you mentioned, Chris, I do think it's good to kind of keep a standing posting for those, because if you come across the right person, it's always kind of good to absorb when you can.
And so what do people, is it smart contract engineer? What's the Solidity? What's the
Solidity is probably Solidity probably. I'm not really sure, to be honest. And yeah, QA Venki is kind of geared up to work on that a bit. He's part-time for the moment, but I think he's hoping to come on full-time in a few months. So that might line up well there. Yeah, I don't know. I think it makes sense to see how it goes with, Venki being part-time, maybe one full-time person, and then see, I think that could be good enough on the QA side to have somebody, doing some light manual testing, but across the board. So it's quite a bit of work when you take into account all the products. I also think Asia, it's interesting because I do think we should always be mindful of trying to distribute and expand into different areas of the world.
I'm working on that, on the Asia one.
Well, one of our newer developers is in Japan. I think it's, obviously it's hard for folks on that side of the globe to make a lot of these calls just because of the time, but yeah, I guess we got to think about that too. Like, how do we schedule, should we be scheduling some things to kind of work better with, East Asian, Australian time zones?
Yeah, that's one of the things I think the lack of conferences. I think a lot of the conferences are like across either in Asia or in the US, involve a lot of people from different areas, and so I think it's been a little bit more difficult the last year to make those connections.
That's it. That brings up an interesting point. Like, I don't know how many people here, but when Ethereum world is in full steam and there's different Ethereum events all around the world every month or every 2 weeks, like how DXdao fits into that. Like, as you know, if you go to these things, like there's a presence. Many entities have presence at many of these events, and so how DXdao, a global decentralized collective, can participate and like have presence at these events, and that includes Asia and like maybe sponsoring some things and that kind of thing. That's like something we don't even know how to do yet, and it's going to be different than like just sending the team and sponsoring, like having a table, right? It's going to be a decentralized version of that, but coordination is probably key.
Yeah, whenever spring comes.
It's going to start ramping back up, I think.
I don't know.
Starting with Bitcoin Miami in June.
Just laughing at Bitcoin Miami, not.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, interesting, because that's where like Vitalik gave his first talk about Ethereum. I think that was a pretty critical moment for the space and for Ethereum. But Christopher's mentioning how Treasury sounds like it could be a part-time role. Yeah, and I'd agree that I don't know if we need very heavy Treasury management itself, but I do think there's like a growing need for accounting and just like having somebody dedicated to tracking things. I mean, I think already we have 3 pools of capital that are somewhat significant, right? Like the main pool being the Treasury, the DAO avatar with like 40 million ish, depending on the day here. You have the buyback reserve, which I think is oft forgotten, but that has 2,500 ETH in it, which is not a small amount of, what is that now, like 4 million?
4.5 million.
And then we just succeeded in getting the first kind of like decent size infusion to the XDAI base. So now XDAI has 160K, and that could be growing, right? And that's just the beginning, because the other thing we're like on the cusp of doing is providing liquidity to Swapper, and that could also be cross-chain, XDAI and mainnet. And then there's also the Omen squad. Like there's we're basically the capital by necessity needs to be moved into various places, and I think it would be smart to have somebody kind of on top of all of it.
The buyback reserve, is that something that can be used?
No, I mean, as it stands, the bonding curve, the implementation of the bonding curve, and this is the same as the token address, mind you, right? So when you look at the DXD token address, it's the same contract. You could go read the code on Etherscan. It's the Fairmint code that was forked. It's the bonding curve, and the buyback reserve serves as like kind of the reserve in that curve that people can sell into, right? So if you sell DXD into the curve, you get the ETH back out of that reserve, and it got built up by people buying into the curve. 10% of the buys went into the buyback reserve. But to answer your question, it can't be used today. However, like that, the bonding curve is upgradable, right? So if DXdao decided to do a different system, right? Like to have a new curve to unify the capital pools, or to change to a dividend model, like any of those, things are possible. In which case that the curve could be upgraded and those funds could be put elsewhere.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I think you need to honor like the spirit, like the aim of that, which was, to be as a buyback reserve for DXD. And that's also though right now, like where profits are being taken, that's only a little bit in Swapper right now, but the profits go to the bonding curve, right? And same thing. So they're landing in that buyback reserve, and that's our mode of operation now. But in theory, that could be changed.
Right. Like I still see like potential to properly upgrade, like to replace the bonding curve with something capital efficient. like we could basically create a balancer V2 pool and then earn interest on it and still be able to burn DXD, right? Like we could still make sure that we are burning DXD, but have like a better system for that, which is generating money. Like right now, those ETH sitting on the bonding curve, they're doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly. They can't even be used. I mean, we also have a similar. I think the first priority is getting something more out of the treasury, right? But yeah, in the future, also the bonding curve itself. Anyways, that's a little bit of a tangent. Just like that, I think that's kind of like the reason, like why we need somebody. I mean, I don't know. Chris, you've been doing kind of a good job. See, so I kind of defer to you on like, you know, how much you think that.
Well, I feel like it's just someone. Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually similar to. It's different than like the HR people mover or the narrative builder, which I think are much more like we were looking for someone to like drive like the collective, drive DXdao into a certain direction and like come up with ideas and execute them. Whereas I think with this one, it's just like I feel like we're putting things together, but they're not like we're not as like systematic on it. And so, I think we just need to be a little bit more, I think systematic is probably the best word.
In the future, there's probably going to be ways of like locked up capital like that, where it's just sitting in that token bonding curve. Like I'm sure there will be a service that you could borrow against that, right? Like borrow against that, put it to work.
I mean, this is the capital. Whatever I think what Geronimo was talking about with the capital efficiency is kind of gets thrown around a lot, but it really is like that's the game, right? Is how do you put it to whatever use, whether it's lending it, whether it's like making it work in other areas. And because we now have these pools of capital, like we have to think like obviously what we're doing in the treasury is like over the last 6 months has worked because the price of ETH has gone up, but like there should be we're going to need to have a way where like that pool of money is automated into a more like capital efficient manner, even if it is just supplying the funding development.
Yeah, there's also the debate of like should DXdao be putting like the treasury capital to work, because like if you think of it like a company, like when Optimism just raised another $25 million from whatever this round, like they're not putting their $25 million to work. Like most companies do not put their capital to work when they're building a company and a set of products and stuff. It's risky. With Bitcoin, some corporations are doing that now, but like the question is like Gnosis does, but like should DXdao be doing that? Like we've never really we've always just made the assumption, we're going to put it into our products, but that's also taking risk with it, and it becomes it's a different decision than like using it to build products. Like, do we want to incentivize other people's capital, or do we want to put our own capital in our own products? We've always assumed we'd want to, but we've never really discussed the differences, I guess, right?
Yeah, I expect that like the fact that no one is doing it means I think it's like a legal overhead to like, I mean, you need to pay taxes for all of this, right? And they need like probably several people to prepare the papers all the time to make sure like doing all this yield farming everywhere. And I expect it's like a legal issue or like a bureaucratic overhead for them to like do it themselves.
For DXdao, I mean, I think the answer is yes, that would be nice, right? But it's also a lot of work, right? Like we're talking, I mean, you'd almost need a whole other product team to build the stuff to like, even if you're leveraging other protocols, like even if you were leveraging some of the existing yield protocols and stuff out there, you need to manage that risk. You need to build the integrations. I don't know, it's a decent amount of work. So I mean, I think we should be doing that. It's just, I don't know if we should be taking people off of product stuff. I think that's our first priority, is to start generating more revenue. I almost think it would be like a project, something to back with DX Ventures. Like, I'm picturing it almost as like a YARN, but like a YARN for DAO treasuries, like something that's a little more professional grade, a little more conservative, like geared towards large pools of like institutional capital. But yeah, I mean, kind of, right? Like the fidelity of DAOs, kind of. But anyways,
Definitely.
convince your friends to build that project and then come to DX Ventures for.
At the same time, like all of that infrastructure exists. You don't need a new entity like DAO, Wi-Fi to build it. We just need to make smart decisions on how much risk to take and where to put the money. Like you could have conservative things like just Compound or just Aave. You don't need to put it into Wi-Fi like vaults and stuff. But like there are so many options out there. Set protocol, like custom balancer, multi-pools. So there's like, it all exists. It just needs to like, you need a risk management strategy, I think.
I think we're going at this like the right speed, or like because we're building out like capabilities. I think DXdao, like having like kind of doing that and building things out there, I think is like a great step here. And like what we've done with like diversifying the treasury and like over the last month and a half, I think is on that step. But I think ultimately, I think just what Geronimo said about like the balancer type of treasury, we're going to want something in that in the long term. The question is just like, how does it get formed? Is that something that we build piecemeal, like almost we're doing with like, well, we put it in DXdao Swapper, we put it in Mainnet Swapper, we put it, here and there, and we slowly kind of build out the capabilities? Or is it something that's like specifically built for this, either by DXdao or someone else, and that we use it? But like that's definitely, I think, the long-term direction. But I think we're focused on the right things now.
Regarding Christopher's point about half-time treasury management, like I don't remember right now. Are we looking for like BD people, like business development?
I have biz dev whiz.
Right, like
so that'd be like
I expected that we could like find someone business development with like half-time focus on treasury management or something like that. So like I don't expect that treasury management is like a full-time job right now, and that's why like I think we could combine that and like having someone who's doing business development while doing treasury management.
Yeah, I think staying lean and people wearing multiple hats is an important thing for us. We can't get going to be somewhat conservative here.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also it's like, I think part-time is like a big advantage of DXdao's like kind of style too. So I think we should definitely be open to that, or at least experimenting with it to see if it's worth for those things. And Geronimo, I think you're right in the sense of like, it's basically like, I mean, like consultants typically like have Excel skills and have some business skills. So those are sometimes overlapped. And part of this is just like putting out feelers for the type of people that we're looking for, not knowing if, we're going to describe the perfect person that we're looking for, but just that person will then like start engaging with us, ask us questions. We can kind of go out and reach them. One of the things I did want to like ask a little bit is where we're like, how we're presenting this and where we're hosting it, I guess. I think it would be good to have maybe we could just PDF it. I can work with someone on that, but like having one that has all of the stuff, all the positions, everything, but then also like making individual ones for each role. And then, breaking up, I think is Nylon is saying. So you could say like, specifically, we're looking for like, people mover HR. Here's the little blurb about DXdao. Here's the little blurb about the position, what we're looking for, what the position will do. Oh, I'm breaking up. Anyway, but
who's breaking up with who here? I can hear you fine.
So, but anyway, so yeah, so I think we'll probably try to do this individually so we can like just send it to people, and I think we need to be very proactive in this. Yeah, and do that. Yeah, I guess we don't want to host on the website, or maybe like how do we go about, I guess, just tweeting out and doing some
tweeting out. Then there's some job boards we can put it on, and then we could also try paid, like a paid mention of it on Week of Ethereum kind of thing, like a newsletter where you link to it somewhere.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to. I read a newsletter. I'm gonna try to link to it this Monday for at least these two, because I think these are the two that we're like looking for that are a little bit more like, I think, senior and could provide like a different vibe to the group. And we maybe want to be more aggressive about them. But I think we're like, we need to be open to and constantly looking for people and be like a fun place to work and all of that. Because it's just, always need to be on the lookout. Thank you, John.
Toast DeFi, great publication. What about, should we talk about like legal budget, or like that's something that, I don't know if Pulp, you wanted to touch on that at all or anything, because there's no mention of that here.
Oh, good point. Thanks, John. With just thinking about strategy as we grow going forward, it could be a good idea to consider a small legal budget. That's just for consulting regarding research into different strategies that we have regarding our business, current business, future business, just because we are kind of considered, I would say, a sophisticated organization at this point because of our treasury size and our growth over the past few months. So that's something that, because of just different things that I've looked into as a contributor over the past few months at this point, I raised with both John and Chris as something that we might want to consider. So this was actually a really good time to kind of bring this up and see how people feel about that. I know we're a DAO, which obviously makes us kind of a novel organization, but it could be something that may be smart moving forward, not only so as I said, kind of the overarching themes, but also specifically, I know people are trying to figure out, as far as contractors, what kind of legal entity they need to create, which, is jurisdictionally different for each person who lives even in a different state in the United States versus, another country. So these are things that we all need to, we might need assistance with. And the idea is maybe that I can kind of fill in some of that kind of base help, even connecting people with legal services in your jurisdiction, or like just wherever you are, Germany, whatever, Canada, Keenan. So that kind of thing, and then bigger strategy questions that may come up as well. Did I miss anything, John, or does that sound about right?
No, I think that sounds right. Like, I think in my view, DXdao is native to the internet. The jurisdiction is the internet, Ethereum, but I don't think that means that we as members shouldn't have our heads up from a legal perspective. And I think there's also, like you mentioned, a lot of potentially individual needs that are arising or could arise. Stuff as benign as just setting up a limited liability corporation. Kind of what's best practices for new members of DXdao in terms of doing that. Something I've been telling people since the beginning is it's a great idea to have a limited liability company if you're a rep holder, just because in theory, if you're interpreted as being a partner or owner of DXdao, then it's good to have that kind of legal protection and not be exposed personally. Stuff like that I think we could do a lot for. And then beyond that, having something kind of earmarked just in case bigger needs arise in the future, I think is smart.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, like having money set aside for to pay to consult with a lawyer if someone in the community needs makes a lot of sense. And this also relates. If we're done with the legal talk, it's related, but I shared some information on Opolis, and so this is kind of more U.S. centric at this point, but it will be relevant to international. But if we do make the assumption that DXdao contributors are going to set up their own entity, like that's the first step, like an LLC, for example. But like once you have an LLC and you're just like a single person or maybe a few person LLC or something, there's this in this new world we live in, like most people don't work. A lot of people in blockchain world, especially Web3, don't really work for companies. So they have their own LLC, they do contract work like we're doing. But then they're like, what do I do next? Like, how do I get healthcare? How do I get benefits and things? And Opolis is built specifically by John Poller and the ETH Denver, team or whatever. It's not related to ETH Denver, but it's the same guy. They basically created this co-op that allows these Web3 workers that have a legal entity to be the legal entity joins this cooperation, and this co-op basically has access. They've negotiated Fortune 100 equivalent 401k healthcare benefits and plus other benefits as well. So with that entity, you can become part of this co-op. And the coolest thing about this is, I don't know if you guys know what co-working or co-employment is, where you work for a startup and you're actually employed by the startup and Trinet or JustWorks and things. It's called co-employment, where they give you the benefits through the big entity. What's cool about this is Opolis is going to work like Trinet and JustWorks, but instead of the value extraction going to Trinet, right, the big corporation, it's actually going to go to the co-op is going to be owned and governed by the actual participants through a work token. So it is a DAO basically. And so the value extraction goes to you as the worker, and it's called payroll mining. So the more payroll that you run through this co-op, the more work tokens you get. And so it actually is a true Web3 version of the working world. John Poller, he can come speak to the group about it. He does a much better job of it. But at the same time, if you guys like this concept in this idea, they are also raising money. And this is, I think this is a service that DAOs across the space are going to need. And it is just US now, but it will be international. But it's a good investment opportunity for maybe DX Ventures. And they're going to have this token. And so actually MakerDAO is they do a thing where they give a grant, and if it becomes a business, it turns into a token investment. So that's almost kind of what we did with Almanit, but we could give this DXdao could give this money as today it would be I guess they're doing a raise, so it's an investment, but it's kind of a grant investment, but with the promise that it becomes the tokens when the tokens exist. And so it is a cool opportunity for DXdao, I think. And you could do a $50,000 minimum check, or $100,000 would give you double the rewards. And we'd be getting these work tokens, which is the governance token of the entire system. So that's kind of a long-winded explanation, but it's a pretty cool. And I'll try to write up a post with more information, but I think it's good for DAO workers, and it's necessary for DAO workers and Web3 workers, and it's also a good investment opportunity for DXdao potentially.
Yeah, we chatted about this in one of the chats, but I agree with Sky. I think maybe the next step would be to bring John. I don't know if you want to talk to him, or I can talk to him as well. To bring John to maybe the Biz Dev call and have him present what they are doing. It does fall in line, his end goal falls in line with a lot of the stuff that DXdao is interested in. And yeah, he's he's a great guy, and yeah. So I think maybe the next step would be to invite him to the BizDev call and have him present.
Just reading Gemino's comment, which I think is true, and I think we're kind of taking this approach, and it's basically like we're trying to enable DXdao contributors to go through this process more easily, because as John said, like we do have this, like DXdao is native to the internet, but the people contributing it are like live and operate in the real world, and yeah, it can be stressful, I think, to go through all of these things, and so yeah, I think can we make it easier on contributors to go through that wherever they are. We have a pretty diverse set here.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Opolis thing is interesting. This guy too. We should, I think talking about that stuff would be great.
John, do you see the difference between Diog and Opolis? Like Diog did the same thing, right?
I asked that question yesterday in the chat, and Sky said no.
I don't actually know what Diorg is, but I've never heard of this.
No, but Diorg is a dev shop that runs itself via DAO.
Yeah, that's not even close to the same.
I think, but from what Opolis has on its website, it sort of sound like there's some parallels. A collective where you work and get, some of these benefits kind of provided for.
Are you employed by Diorg?
Yes, they I'm not currently employed by Diorg, but I actually did some work with Diorg prior to DXdao stuff, and it's not an employee relationship, but you're doing contracting work, and they were aiming to provide additional benefits.
If you're doing contract work for Diorg, you don't where does the Fortune 100 benefits come in? How does that?
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that they had achieved that, but that was part of what they were thinking, is that they would help provide healthcare and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that is the main difference. I think at Diog they also started to give out those Diog tokens, which represent some ownership of something. Why is the token existing? What are they governing for this Opolis stuff?
So if you know what co-employment is,
never ask why does the token exist.
No. If you know what co-employment is, right? There's an entity. So try 1,000 startups. They don't want to do their own or human resources, so they.
Sky. I suggest we invite John and have him explain, because.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have.
I think
the other John, because
there's only room for one John this time
on the call.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Let him explain it, and I mean, whether or not there's parallels to Diorg doesn't really matter, right? The important thing is that we understand what Opolis is doing and how it might fit in. In terms of the open positions, on the legal topic, I almost curious what people's thoughts on this would be, that, and I think Pulp has sort of been filling this role to some degree already, but having almost, I would describe it as a general counsel spot, kind of like the Swiss Army knife of legal roles, but I'm curious what people would think.
Maybe we should hire a firm that specialize. There are a couple of US-based law firms that actually have a decent knowledge of these things. They're mostly into the whole farming and snapshot tool-based DAOs, but yeah.
Yeah, so that would be the idea. So you guys know I'm a lawyer. That's my background and practice in the States. So I have professional relationships with different crypto-based law firms. So it would be my interest, instead of paying a large retainer to a firm that would charge an hourly rate, then that would range of just, somewhere between $500 to $1,000 an hour to give legal advice. The idea would be to have someone, not just myself, but others, a part of governance, kind of funnel questions that we have through my work or anything else that comes up when we do need attorneys on the back end to figure stuff out for us. We would do that. So that's sorry, I just read the comments.
Yeah, when you said 500 to 1,000, it's like cue the like, I'm in the wrong job. What am I doing?
Yeah, right. Except, yeah.
So and I think that's kind of what I think, almost like the coordinator for this, because we were talking about, I think the Swiss Army knife is a good kind of idea for coordinating different like some real world legal issues for people that are, because we just have a lot of complications. But I think the other side of it is also on what we're trying to do in like best practices, right? And I think like the buyback is a good example of this. If we try to have like a way of putting forth like systems and processes for doing things in like an open and transparent way, we can actually learn a lot from the existing legal system for how to do things and structure it, even just in being a like transparent way. So I think having someone, I think Pulp would be very good at this in just coordinating with that outside legal world for whatever DXdao it needs in terms of research. I was going to say, actually, when you said trust me, like you said, I'm a lawyer, I was going to be like, trust me, I'm a lawyer. That was the lawyer's joke.
Everybody can have your lawyer joke. I think it's like there'd be a mix between research, kind of forward looking, let's keep a heads up on what we're doing, and operational, like let's, help members handle things, be, kept informed, et cetera, et cetera. I think the DXD buyback's like a good example, right? Like the work that's already been done there, compensation guidelines, et cetera, like all this stuff. Yuri, are you a lawyer in a lawless land? Oh man. So yeah, cool. Any other thoughts on that? Or
well, I guess I would add, my intention is to like move away from being pseudonymous. I don't think I pronounced that word correctly. When I do if I do, or if everyone's okay with me kind of taking on more of a position like this, because it would just make more sense based on the professional relationship. So yeah, that would also be part of it if there's any reservations regarding that as well. So I have some opinions. Yeah, exactly. There'll be a face to the name. And actually, one thing I should mention, this is way kind of a sidetrack, because I think most of you know that I've been working with another partner. He has some interest and would want to circulate some potential roles he'd like to fill as far as marketing, specifically regarding some tokenomics stuff with an XDAI drop that he spoke with Geronimo about. And then just some other details, but he would be circulating that amongst you all to get feedback on, and we would kind of, obviously separate our roles from that point forward, and yeah, all that.
Is that mitosis? Is that the right word for this? Yeah. I see Machina's over here on my screen and Pulp's over here.
Exactly. Yes, of sorts.
That could be cool. Yeah, I was also laughing at the irony of with the buyback. I was talking with Pulp about this transparency statement and just laughing to myself about working on a transparency statement with a pseudonymous person. But yeah, so I think that kind of the identity thing makes a lot of sense in my mind.
Yeah, so if any of you have questions about that, please feel free to ping me or whatever, and we'll be like transitioning. If there's just any questions, anything, let me know.
Yeah, maybe for the open positions, we're looking for pseudonymous contributor now, that we need needs someone to fill that role.
I know we need to maintain our pseudonymous quota.
Yeah.
And also, if we could just say pseudonymous a few more times.
I do.
You pronounce it better than me, so
Yeah, that's my specialty. That's what I like to say.
I don't know what orange juicer is.
Yeah. All right, that's good. Anything else on the open position stuff? I thought maybe if we have a few minutes here, we could just talk through, maybe people have questions about doing worker proposals on XDAI. Now that the money is there. Yeah. Sorry?
How do I get to XDAI?
First question. Okay, let's see.
Sorry,
So there's
the DAO?
Yeah, there's an address. Yeah, there we go.
Everyone should memorize that address.
0xe716. I actually do have that memorized at this point.
does that URL, and that URL works well.
It should work.
Okay, because before I knew there was like a few different URLs, like the V1.
I think
Yeah,
the problem-
everything should be on the same URL now. It just yeah, depending on which network the DAO is, it will just send you there and then ask you to connect to that network with your MetaMask.
I think you can follow these DAOs in Alchemy. That helps too, because there's some name. There's a bunch of XDX DAOs deployed. Won't name names, but there's a bunch of those out there, and so there's a little confusion sometimes. But you can follow it, and then it should kind of show up, I think, in the top if you go back to Alchemy.
Yeah, the trouble I was having is it looks like Alchemy is case sensitive for their searches, and I was typing in DXdao and I couldn't find it for the life of me.
Yeah, this is actually a subgraph thing where I think subgraph doesn't allow you to do case insensitive searches, and then to be aware of Alchemy searches, you need to get the case exact for it to come back with anything.
Right. Thank you.
I mean, you could parse it in the front end, but yeah.
And then in terms of connecting to XDAI, I think most people probably know how to do that. Maybe we could write a little guide about this. Probably should go in like with the worker compensation guidelines, how to get in. But I think Omen now has a nice.
I was thinking, do we have like and now, I mean, I connected to Binance Smart Chain and all of my other networks. I'm switching. It's actually pretty easy within MetaMask.
So really, Chris, did you use? Maybe I'll ask this on another call. Never mind.
Aren't we supposed to kick Chris from the call after he said he added BS like Binance Chain?
Oh.
Well, I was just going to ask. I
didn't actually use it. I just added it. That was the only thing.
Okay, so that's the issue. I think there might be some blocks around Binance Smart Chain with their bridge. However, I just found out that you can actually bridge through XDAI to Binance Smart Chain. So XDAI has an Omni bridge to mainnet Ethereum, and it has an Omni bridge to Binance Smart Chain. So if you don't like Binance's bridge, you can actually use two different XDAI bridges to get from mainnet Ethereum to BCS, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or if you're already on XDAI, because we're already going to be on it, you're already going to be on XDAI, then you can go from XDAI to Binance Smart Chain if you want to try it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in general, XDAI has really good documentation on this website that John just shared, xdaichain.com. It has like everything for bridges, for connections, for whatever. That's kind of what I'm hoping that like DXdAO's docs eventually look like. But I don't know, maybe borrowing some of their, like they have like how to connect using MetaMask to XDAI chain. Like that should also be on DXDAO's docs, right? So whether it's like borrowing what they have written, which I believe is all open source, or linking to their information as well, either way is an option, I think.
Yeah, and I think kind of regardless, because we save on the proposal costs, XDAI is a better place for the worker proposals, but there could be some additional steps to get to a fiat off-ramp, right? Like you're going to have to bridge back to mainnet and then do whatever you would normally do, go to Coinbase or whatever.
Yeah. One other question: if a worker wants to be paid in ETH, are they able to still do that if they don't want DAI?
Well, so that raises an interesting question, right? Right now we only have XDAI, but why not put some wrapped ETH and maybe even wrapped USDC on XDAI?
So I was working on a DAO Talk post before this. Hopefully I can send it out soon on basically funding Swapper on XDAI. And so I talked to John a little bit about this, and we've kind of, I think the contracts have been deployed for a week or two on Swapper, and I think it's the biggest WETH DAI pool is like $170,000. So we could pretty easily like take that. We could basically supply the liquidity, but that's also like, should we have some in the treasury, like in the DXdao treasury, just in terms of WETH, and then like how much total funds do we want to put into XDAI? Just like what are we considering the risk there? Yeah. And presumably if we have WETH there's no reason to have some there. Then people could do the same thing on XDAI that they do on mainnet in terms of requesting both or requesting one or the other.
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea. It would also allow us to start integrating Swapper finally into Omen. Like one example would be that we could then start creating markets with ETH as collateral, and people can actually like use XDAI as like the main native asset on Omen to like still participate on those ETH markets by just like routing through Swapper. So we would have like properly compete against Augur, which has like ETH and I don't know DAI. So we would have like at least that, and all like native in one interface.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think we should be making the moves. Not sure like what limits we want to consider. I was actually just pulling up DeFi Pulse on like what does XDAI actually have total.
I think it's 26 million.
Yeah.
Chris,
it's grown like double the last month. XDAI, people coming over a couple $100K a day almost.
As part of funding Swapper on XDAI, we're going to need, a lot more funds on XDAI. Should we we could already start moving ahead with more proposals to move 100 Ether clips of ETH and XDAI to XDAI. Do we want to wait for that, or do we want to start doing that now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to have a chunk of ETH and a chunk of DAI in there, because when we're about to clear, I mean, in terms of the worker proposals, right? If people are doing the worker proposals on XDAI, that will, clear out that 160K that we have in there now pretty quickly. So I think we should move with either, I'm not sure if it's two proposals that we do, 100 ETH of just WETH over, and then 100 ETH of DAI over to that can be used within the treasury and also maybe on Swapper. But I think considering it takes 7 days to move, I think we should move on that quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Like there are some contracts deployed on XDAI for Swapper, but like maybe a more official version would release it, but that might require a proposal to mainnet. But I mean, that could happen in 5 days even. So like once it's done, and I think Federico's working on that. So like if I think it makes sense to start moving on these proposals to get funds in place.
So do we need a different authorization proposal to specifically start the program for, let's say, 200 ETH clips to XDAI, rather than because we did the 100 ETH authorization of XDAI with that amount of funds. We have a separate authorization for Treasury, which is on mainnet, and so we need new authorization for like a flow of funds to XDAI to be used for Swapper on XDAI and some payroll.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think we want to have this around Swapper specifically, because I think like that's what we're trying to do here. Like we're saying like we want to put funds on XDAI because we want to build up Swapper there. So I think it is obviously related to the Treasury diversification stuff. It's related to payroll on XDAI. Like we're using those same things, but I think like we want to earmark these funds specifically for this Swapper on XDAI, just so that we're not like affecting those other things. Or at least like we should be thinking about like we talked about Treasury diversification for payroll on XDAI, Treasury diversification on mainnet, but like we need to start be thinking specifically about like Treasury like movements into Swapper on XDAI and like providing a framework around that.
Yeah, and if we have the intent to eventually have Swapper with funding, with capital, like Swapper working on XDAI, Swapper working on mainnet, and the XDAI bridge for tokens will be embedded in that experience, right? Because if we have that intent and that plan and that goal, and that becomes an easy bridge to XDAI, we can take that to the XDAI team and get like some incentive from them, like to help grow that and incentivize that as well, and maybe with funds or liquidity mining and things like that. But if that is the goal, we can take that as a package to them and say, this is what we want to do. Like, what can you guys do to help incentivize that?
Yeah. I mean, I think I think XDAI could move, regardless of what we think about XDAI long term, like I think it could have like a bright next month or two, and we could be good players in that. I think I just posted a tweet that there was a maker forum thread about trying to set up an MKR XDAI pool on HoneySwap. It was like 2 days ago. And so I think it was kind of justified, or like kind of the reason to think about it. It's like they're kind of just like tapping their toes into XDAI. Obviously, they're not going to set up a whole system there, a CDP system there, but I think it's just they're considering it, and I think others will too.
Oh yeah, and I think did someone already share this, that we like DXdao as a DAO is now listed in like XDAI things on XDAI, and their noted dApps and applications.
Yeah. And Swapper like works on XDAI now, so it's sweet. Like you can just do it. So it's we can do this, and then Arbitrum. We did have some contact with Arbitrum actually just with this week, just to this morning, and they said they're still targeting like a March rollout for that. So we could see, running this playbook on Swapper XDAI over the next 6 weeks, building up liquidity there, getting some traction, and then like running the same playbook on Arbitrum.
might see, like, if Optimism really is gonna release in March, and we're doing arbitration or routing to Uniswap already, we might like get more L2s on Swapper, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if people saw. So Optimism raised a bunch of money, A6 from A16Z, and they said a March mainnet launch. And so we'll see. I think we should definitely be prepared to deploy there too. But Federico's all over the place. So, yeah. Oh, that's sweet. So the DX stats for Swapper on XDAI.
If we have Swapper on Arbitrum and it's still like controlled by a multi-sig by their team, how much funds are we comfortable putting on there, or is that still like a test?
I mean, I don't know we'll see what they roll out. Like, I don't know what it's hard to know without knowing what their like mainnet looks like exactly.
Yeah, I think it should be limited, but I think it might make sense to be a little bit aggressive there, like, to be competitive.
And I think like $1 million of liquidity is like a good chunk, especially in like the early days, because like people are just gonna be like testing it out a little bit. And so like we could do that very, quickly and efficiently, as we kind of perfect the ability. We're kind of working on the process now. And like, yeah, I think, and the same thing even with Optimism, like Optimism launch, we do the same thing. We put $1 million in on Optimism across a couple different pairs, have the routing feature. So we're tracking like it's we could gather some momentum. Cool.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts, questions? One last thing, but before we close, as some of you know, I'm Augusto has been heads down. He's part-time lately, where he's working on a house and stuff, and he's also heads down with some code stuff. And the dev call has become more like a broader scope with the teams being built up. And so I've actually started kind of emceeing the dev call, and I plan to be pretty focused on the product side kind of going forward for the near term here. And so because of that, I was actually thinking of transitioning out of this emceeing of this call, so not as to be monopolizing too many calls here. And I think Sky is in a great position to be running this call. He's been super involved across products. To be honest, I don't put a lot of time into this call, but it does, I think, require a good kind of like understanding of things kind of across the board. And I think Sky is in a great position to do that. So I was talking to him about running this call going forward. So I think, starting next week, Sky will be doing that. This is like a wedding. If anybody has any objections, you can raise them now. But if not, Sky will be running the call going forward.
Sweet. And you're allowed to drink when I run it if you want.
The person who's the earliest point in the day, early morning on the West Coast, but
yeah, maybe we should start a DX happy hour at some point too.
Yeah, I would do that.
Who's happy hour time though? Europe or US?
Hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Well, Zet's usually up and online, but he doesn't drink, so
yeah,
that's always awake.
Wake Geronimo up. Whoever else wants to get up. Gemino, cool, great.
All right, guys.
All right, boys.
Good call.
Sweet.
And
Bye-bye.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.